Performance testing using Jmeter. So it is an introduction lecture. So let us start with it. Before starting with it, we have some frequently asked questions which are being asked by us many times. So we have jotted them down and these are the questions. So the first question is, I need to clear interview or work on a project. See, this is the common question and everyone has in mind. Now see, it takes 1 week to learn and it takes at least 10 to 12 weeks of practice to clear interview or work on a project. Okay, now the next question that comes up is, which version will you be using? See, we would be using the latest version, that is Jmeter 5. Now it has two variants, Jmeter 5.1 and 5.0. So either we would be using 5.0 or we would be using 5.1. Now the next question is Java required for Jmeter? See, Java is required, yes, and the basics of core Java are required actually, and that is for bean shell scripting. So we would be covering that as well. Okay. Now the next question is, will we cover any framework? See, there are no frameworks in Java, this Jmeter. Okay. As you know that there are no frameworks in performance testing. So we are learning performance testing. So there are no frameworks. There are scenarios. So we would be having scenarios. Okay. Now what scenarios will we cover? Right. So different scenarios would be covered on different websites and there won't be any theoretical lecture. So once we start with the practical part, there won't be any theoretical part. Okay, and then end-to-end scenarios would be covered. Now what are the advantages of learning Jmeter? Right, so first is it is free to use. Yeah, anyone can use it and you can just download it and start using it. There is no charge for that. The next is open source. Open source means that whenever you want to make any change to its code, okay, you can download the code and you can start making changes. It is all up to you. Okay, it is provided free of cost to you. Okay. Now the next thing is easy to understand. Now easy to understand means that it has a graphical user interface. Now once you started working with it, you would get to know the things very easily. Okay, you don't have to fiddle around many things. It is easy to use. Okay, that is why it is easy to understand. Now the next thing is performance testing. So see, everyone has in mind whenever it comes to performance testing that we would be breaking the system, right? Now actually in performance testing our goal is not to break the system, so we don't have to break the system actually. What we have to do, right? What we need to do then? So we need to measure the performance. Now there are so many criteria for that and we need to measure the performance accordingly. Okay, so what exactly we need to do? So suppose there is a system and we have 3 sets of users. Okay, and when it comes to sets of users, this means that users arriving in an hour. As you can see that I've mentioned over here as well. So suppose in first set there are 50 users arriving in an hour. Okay, they are coming, they're doing their work and they're going back. Okay, now in another set there are 500 users coming in an hour. Okay, they're coming and they're doing their work. Now when it was 50 users, the system was running absolutely fine. Okay, when 500 users came in an hour, the system was working normally. But when 5,000 users in an hour came, okay, so the system was not able to bear that load. Okay, so we need to check that how the system is performing under various user loads. Okay, so we need to check how much capable a system is. Suppose we kept on increasing the load and we got to know that the system is capable of bearing up to 1000 users. Okay, so we know that the system is capable of bearing 1000 users only. So if we have to increase that user load capacity, we may need to make some changes to the system. Okay, now the next thing is, so what kind of scenario do we use? So see, we would be using happy path scenario. Now what is a happy path scenario? So let us discuss that. Now suppose we have a flight booking site, so we would be opening that and we would be providing the details. Then the next thing what we do is we select the flight. Okay, and after that we provide the passenger details and in the end we book that flight, right? This is what we do in the usually do in the flight booking sites, right? For example, makemytrip.com, Skyscanner, or say airline website, right? Everywhere we do the same thing. So the scenario is that every 90% of the users are coming for the same thing. Right, so this is called happy path scenario, where most of the users would be generating the load on the most commonly accessed pages. Okay, now over here what we need to test is that we need to test these particular pages specifically, because if the user is requesting them and the pages are not getting responded on time, or are not getting served on time, then user won't be coming back to our site again, right? So we don't want to lose our customers. So that is why we test the happy path scenario where the most of the users would be going. Now people don't usually go to the contact us page, right? But they do go through this process, right? Now the next thing, performance metrics. As I discussed earlier as well, we would be measuring the performance on the base of some metrics. So there are some performance metrics. The first thing is, suppose this is my system and this is a server on the internet. Okay, I'm sending a request, I'm requesting a page, and the request is going to the server. Okay, so suppose at 0 ms I generated a request, so there was no time the request was generated, right? Then it took 75 milliseconds to reach the server. Okay, now the time taken from my point to the server point is known as connect time, because it is trying to establish a connection, right? Now the next thing, the server got message and it responded back. So the total time it took from my computer from request to go and come back, and the total time is 150 milliseconds. This means that 0 milliseconds, then it took 75 milliseconds to reach here. After 75 milliseconds more, the request came back. Now the total time, this time would be considered as latency. Now for the latency is the time known for the first response. Okay, time taken by the first response. Now suppose I'm requesting a page. Now it doesn't it is not say mandated that it would be sending only one part of page. Okay, sometimes the pages are very large, sometimes the data is very large, so it can be served to me in the form of packets. So suppose first packet came and this became our latency. Now there is only one packet, then this would be the load time as well. But if there are more packets, so say there is one more packet and it is taking 40 more milliseconds. So now the load time would be 190 milliseconds. So load time can vary. Okay, it doesn't matter that it should be the same as latency, it can be higher time as well. So the time taken by the whole request to complete is the load time. So suppose there are 3 packets, so it would be 250 milliseconds. So in 250 milliseconds the whole request is completed, right? This means that the load time is 250 ms, the latency for this is 150 ms, and the connect time is 75 milliseconds. Okay, now if there are 4 requests being served in 1 second, right? So this means that the throughput is 4. So how throughput is calculated? The number of requests per unit time. Okay, it can be say 4 requests per hour as well. So it doesn't matter how many requests are being served. So the time metric would be changing, but we are having some throughput, that how many samples or how many requests are getting completed in a say specific amount of time. Okay, or in per unit time. So per unit time means that it can be second, it can be 1 hour, it can be 1 day as well. Okay, now the next thing, learning process. So what would be the learning process? Okay, see, the first thing would be build. Okay, so we would be building the say scenario. Okay, and we call it as script building phase. Now the next phase is run. Okay, once we are done with the script building phase, we would be moving on to the load generation phase, where we would be generating the load. Once we are done generating the load, we would be moving on to analyze phase, where we would be analyzing the reports. Okay, so what happens is that in the script building, it is the most time consuming phase, and we build the script. Once you are done with the script generation of script, okay, we move on to the load generation, where we put on the load on the server. Before that, we have not put on the load, we were just making script, a good script. Okay, now after we are done generating a script, we would be generating load, and we would be putting on load to the server. So we got the results. we made a report and we started to analyze the report. After analyzing the report, we got to know that there is some code changes need to be made. So once there is a code change, right? So script needs to be rebuilt again. So we would be moving back to the script building phase. Okay, and again the load generation and report analysis. Now, if we got to know that there is some, say, a problem with the hardware, okay, then we would be making changes to the hardware and going back to the load generation phase. So this is a process, okay, a recursive process. It can be build phase, it can be run phase, but after the analyze phase, we would be going back to the build or run phase. Okay, so there are three phases which rerun themselves. Okay, now the next thing is Jmeter. Okay, so let us start with Jmeter. So installation and usage is covered. Now let us first discuss about, do we need something before installing Jmeter? So yes, there is a prerequisite, and that is Java. So we need JDK to be installed. Okay, specifically we would be installing JDK 8. So let us discuss that. And how to install and configure JDK, right? So the first thing that we need to do is we need to go to a website, or you can just look for this on Google, that is JDK 8 download. Okay, you would be searching for it, and in a moment you would get a result. So this is the result, Java SE Development Kit 8 downloads. Just go through this link and make sure that you are going with the oracle.com web page. Okay, the URL should contain oracle.com. Okay, now we are onto this download page. Just select on this option, that is accept license agreement, and then select the file you want to download. Now I am using Windows 64-bit, so I would be downloading this particular file, and it is being downloaded right now. Okay, apart from that, you might be using Linux, or you might be using Macintosh or Solaris, so you can download the file according to your operating system. Now if you're using 32-bit version of Windows, then you need to download this Windows x86. Now how to make sure that you're using which version of Windows? So you can go to my computer and then right click on this computer and go to the properties. Okay, here you would be able to see the version type which you're using. If it is mentioned 64-bit or x64, then it is a 64-bit operating system. If it has been mentioned 32-bit or x86, then it is a 32-bit operating system. Okay, now as you can see that the download is complete. The installation is pretty easy. You just need to open the file that you have downloaded, click on next, and yes, and in the end finish, and you're done. Now Java SE Development Kit 8 would be installed. Once it is installed, you need to go to this website, that is jmeter.apache.org, and here you need to download the file. Okay, now which file you need to download? So quickly go to this download releases page, and over here in this page download this file, say Apache Jmeter 5.1.zip. Now make sure that you are downloading the binary. Make sure that you're not downloading the source. If your intention is to make changes to the source code, then only download the source code, otherwise download this particular file only. Now this file is also downloaded. Okay, so open this file, and what we have to do next is we need to extract the contents of this file. Okay, so this is a compressive file, and once it is downloaded, you need to extract the contents. But where you need to extract the contents, let us discuss that. So I would be clicking on extract to, and I would be choosing a directory here in A drive, and I'll be naming the directory as, say, batch. Okay, and say pre-recorded videos. Okay, so once you're done extracting this data, your installation is complete. Okay, now how to verify the installation? So let it complete first, and then we would be discussing how we can open Jmeter. Okay, how we can execute Jmeter. So the installation is almost complete. Let us move to the directory where I've installed it. So the directory is this A drive batch pre-recorded video, and this is the directory where my Jmeter is getting installed. So still there is some 6% left, so we need to wait a bit, and once it is done, we can start Jmeter. Now starting Jmeter is very easy. Okay, it is not a tedious task, so don't worry about it. So all you have to do is that go to this directory where Jmeter is installed, then move inside a directory that is bin. Okay, so once you're inside this bin directory, you can see the file apache jmeter.jar. Just double click on this file and it would be executed. Okay, now once you have run this file, you can see this window apache jmeter, and you would be able to see this particular window. Now Jmeter 5.1 has started and you can start working with it. So now in this window screen you can see multiple things. So let us discuss about it. So there are two portions actually. So the first portion is this Project Explorer pane, and the next portion is Properties pane, right? So in the Project Explorer pane, we would be able to see the elements of Jmeter. Whatever elements we have in our test plan would be shown over here. Okay, now what does test plan mean? So test plan means that, say, the structure of our test. Okay, so this is project pane. Okay, and this is properties pane. Okay, so there are two panes actually. So this is a project pane and this is a properties pane. So whatever element you have highlighted over here in this pane would be the properties of that particular element would be shown over here. As you can see that right now I have highlighted the test plan, so it is showing me the properties of this test plan, and it is asking me for name and comments. Now whenever there is an element being highlighted, it should have its name and comments part. So you would be able to see these two things common everywhere in the, say, properties pane. Every time in the properties pane, whenever you have highlighted an element in Jmeter. Okay, so over here there are other things as well. There are some menu options, there are some buttons actually. So let us discuss about them. The first button is new, which is used to create a new file, and the next is template. So whenever you have some templates, you can click this button and you can see the templates. Now the next thing is save or open. Okay, so the first button is open. Now let us discuss about save first. So suppose you have a test plan, you need to save the file, so you can save the file, and the extension is .jmx. Whenever you create a file with Jmeter, its extension would be JMX. Okay, now you can open the JMX files as well by clicking on this particular button. Then there is cut copy paste. This is used for the elements you have highlighted on this Project Explorer pane. And the next thing is plus and minus mark. So this is used when you have multiple nested elements and you want to expand everything, or you just want to collapse everything. So suppose I'm adding some elements. Don't worry about the type of elements right now. I'm just adding some dummy elements. Okay, so suppose this is expanded. So if I click this button, it would be, say, collapsing everything. If I click this button, it would be expanding everything. I'm collapsing everything. If I expand it, you can see that there is only one thing getting expanded. Okay, if I click on this again, then it is extracting everything. So expand all and collapse all. Apart from that, there is a button which allows us to enable or disable a particular element. So suppose when the test is running, I don't want to include some particular element in the test. So I can just disable that element. For example, this thread group, I've disabled it. The text has been marked as gray now, and this element and its nested elements won't be included in the test plan execution. Okay, now if I toggle it again, it would be enabled. Okay, so you just need to make sure that whether it is enabled or disabled. Now the next four buttons are start and stop. First two are for starting the test, next two are for stopping the test. Okay, we would be discussing more about them later, that what is the special functionality of these buttons. Now the next two buttons are for clearing the logs. So once you have a log, you can, say, clear out the log as well. This is for selecting clearing a particular log. This is for clearing all the logs. Now the next thing is search. So this allows you to search an element on the project pane. So whatever element you have, you just provide the name and it would be searching the element for you, and it is for the resending the search. Then the next option is function helper dialog. When we would be discussing more about it when we would be discussing about functions in Jmeter. Okay, and the next button is help. So this was about the graphical user interface of Jmeter, and in the next video we would be learning about, say, a recording. Okay, thank you.